Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitnie Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, to talk to you about all things leadership. And today we are going to be talking about leading with confidence, right? Rather than leading from your ego. And I am sure that you have had the experience where someone has been all in their ego, and a lot of times it masks itself as confidence, right? But ego is not confidence. Ego is about your self-interest. Ego is inward focus and about you. And if you've been watching us for any amount of time, and quite frankly, if you're doing any studying about leadership, you understand that leadership is not about you. It's about those that you are leading, those that you have a responsibility for developing and bringing along and helping to make your team the best that it can be. So the part that is about you is being a better you, being someone who is willing to look out for other people, right? And so learning and growing, those are the components of leadership that are about you. Being self-aware, managing yourself and your emotions, those things are about you, but those are in service to those that you lead. So any opening thoughts, Robert?
I think the only thing, the thing that came to mind when you started talking about this topic was that when you're confident, you have nothing to prove, right? And that's, that's how you know someone's confident. They have nothing to prove. It doesn't mean that from time to time their confidence, takes a hit and then they find themselves working from the ego space. But primarily, they don't have anything to prove. You don't see these folks trying to, grab headlines or steal someone else's thunder. When I think of someone whose ego is in the way, or who leads with their ego, everything is about them. We talked a little bit about this last time, taking credit from other people, doing all these things. And I find that people that usually, in my experience, people that lead in that, egoic, self-concerned way, those are usually the people that have very weak egos and they're masking. It's like they're faking it till they make it. And they usually don't realize that most people see through that.
I think the point that you make is that there's nothing to prove. Right. And so confidence, let's lay out a couple of basic definitions. Confidence is having faith in your own abilities. And people who are confident are people who are open to input, open to feedback, open to change. Right. Ego, on the other hand, because it operates out of self-interest, it is protecting. It is self-protecting, and it's seeking approval, it's seeking accolades and seeking validations, and usually at any and all costs. So it doesn't matter who gets trampled in the process. It doesn't matter who gets thrown under the bus, right? Because it's about you and lifting yourself up rather than lifting other people up. And the point you made, people will see through that, right? The ego masquerading as confidence. People will see through that, and it will create problems for you in the end. If nothing else, others will not have confidence in you.
Right.
And that's the other part about being a leader, right? Is that ultimately people have confidence in you, which is why when we go to the concept of leading, not from your position, but from influence, if you are not authentic, if you're not coming across as authentic, if no one is following you, you're not leading well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to throw out there, Whitney, is that there are some people that despise confident people. They'll see somebody who's confident, and also they'll just start throwing a whole lot of shade and hate their way, and that really speaks volumes about the kinds of people they are. It's like, oh, I don't, this. We say in New York, it's that person thinks who they are. That's the New York phrase. They think who they are. I don't know where that came from, but that's what a lot of people in New York say. Oh, that person thinks who they are. But I've had that thrown my way. It's like, oh, I have no problem saying what I'm good at. If you ask me, there's a difference. If you ask me, oh, are you good at? Yes. And that's happened to me in my career, where someone will ask, are you good at something? I'll say, yes, I'm very good at it. And then they'll be like, oh, you have an ego problem. Well, what am I supposed to tell you? You ask the question, right? Now, if I just start volunteering that information out of context, I could see. And that's what a lot of people who lead with their ego do. You see them volunteering, oh, I'm great at this and I'm great at that. And you're talking about something completely different.
And that's a good point that you have, again, going back, having faith in your abilities, being confident in yourself does not mean that you should never, or rather not being egotistical with what you feel about yourself or what you know about yourself. That doesn't mean that you don't get to say things, right? It doesn't mean that you don't get to say that I'm good at this, that, and the other thing. But having an ego would be, taking, I think your point is well taken, where you're offering it up. It's not on the table. It's not up for conversation. And you're using it to bolster yourself in situations where it's not necessary, right? If someone's not asking you, just to walk into a room and start talking about the things that you've done out of context, you might want to check that, right? And I will offer this. It's not necessarily black and white. There's some shades of gray. There's probably a place where you go from being egotistical to being, maybe overly humble, right? Humble is probably somewhere in the continuum, and then you keep going, and then it becomes egotistical.
Right.
You can own who you are, what you know, what you've done, but that doesn't mean that you're sort of using it as a weapon against other people. And that's sort of how, when I see ego in reality, in practice, at play, right? It's people sort of using their abilities, their accolades, using them to downplay other people, right? Or using them to bolster themselves when it's not necessary. It's not necessary. So here are a couple of things that I want to say about ego versus confidence. And then I want to talk a little bit about some things that you can do to actually increase your confidence, to build or boost your confidence. And so first, it is just thinking about ego and confidence. As I mentioned before, as we've mentioned, stop making it about you, right? This is not, everything is not about you. And so you want to tamp down your desire to always lift yourself up, put yourself above other people, and to take credit where the credit is not yours, particularly when we're talking teams here, right? And we're talking leadership as part of a team. Everyone has a role to play. as a part of a team. Your job as a leader is to make sure everyone is on the same page, that you guys are working towards the same goal. Everyone knows their part, that they are playing their part, and then that they are getting credit appropriately, and that you don't come along behind and pretend like what the team did is because of you.
Right.
Right? That you're the reason that the team has achieved whatever its goals were or are, and that it is only because of you that has happened. And I'm pretty sure stories that we've shared both on the show and over the years, we've both worked for and with leaders, that was their approach, right? They took credit for things that were not theirs, whether they were ideas or actual work getting done.
And no one's immune. I've seen it done on all levels of organization. I've seen CEOs do it, and quite frankly, I've been often shocked when I've seen that. I'm not trying to. I was just like, really, that all shocks me sometimes. The leader of an organization taking credit for a very low level person's work. That always seemed to me, well, it's like, wow, you need to do that. that always shocks me. It doesn't shock me so much when I think it's disappointing, but it doesn't shock me so much when people on the same level do it, or one level up does it. But when I see the leader of the organization do it, that's when I get like, wow, that shocks me. But I don't think anybody's immune to it. I think having a real good knowledge of yourself, and when your ego gets activated, I think it's, anytime you're defensive, it's because your ego feels threatened. Let's put it that way. And so when you find that you're being defensive, take a step back and look at, okay, what's happening here? Why am I doing this? Why am I saying these things? Or why am I taking credit for things? Or why am I interjecting or putting myself out there when really it's not about me in this moment? You have an opportunity to do that. And I think that, we always talk about how really great leaders are rare, but those are the leaders that are able to monitor their ego. They know what their strengths are, aren't shy about talking about their strengths, and they aren't shy about talking about the things that they are not good at as well.
So here's the interesting thing about this first concept, right? Again, it's not about you, not taking credit, things like that, is that if you will just add value to the team in the way that your role is meant to add value, and you contribute to the goal of that organization, that organism, right? That organization, whether it's the entire company, a department, a team, whatever it is. If you will just do your part, the credit that is due you will come to you.
Eventually, right?
Right.
I think it's really funny because I started laughing when you said value, because value is always about other people. It's never about yourself. Giving value, because what I value may not be the same thing as what you value. And if I want to be of value to you, I need to find out what it is that you value. And you have to get out of yourself, like you were saying, and find out what the other person wants. And I think that is something that people find hard to do. It's like, what does the other person value? And then attempt to give them what they value.
And the same thing is true for people as it is for the goal, right? What does if you could step back and see the goal as a person, what does the goal need from me? What does the goal need from you? If we're a team, like our show, what is this endeavor that we're partnering on? What does this need from me? What does this need from you? I don't need to pretend like this is all about me, right? In order to get whatever is due me from our partnership. I'm looking to see, how can I serve you? How can I serve our shared goal? And then trust that what is for me will come to me, right? Which sort of leads into the second thing that I want to mention is, and you've already mentioned this, is not being defensive, not having a defensive minded mindset and approaching things from a position of lack, as if everything is a zero-sum game, right? And therefore, if I don't get mine, no one's getting anything, right? Rather than, we are all contributing, we will all receive. And that's the nature of teamwork. And we've talked about sports in the past, using that as an analogy for this. I think because it's easy for people to see that, right? And we're in the middle of the basketball, the finals. And as we've watched the teams whittle down, it seems to me that the two most team-oriented teams, that have risen, the cream has risen to the top. Right? That's not always the case. It's not always the case.
But just don't mention my hated rivals.
I won't mention either team. I'll let people draw their own thoughts and conclusions on it. But you look at what's happening, and I just see both, and all I care about in the end is good basketball, right? I want to see good basketball. I do have a preference for one over the other. I'm okay with either for different reasons, none of which are relevant for our show, so I'm not going to mention them, and we won't mention your hatred for one of the teams. But the point is, as teams, as it relates to teams, watching them be team oriented in their approach to the game rather than me focused. I need mine. I need to be the one that's shooting the ball. I need to be the one scoring the most points. I need, all of this. I need the accolades rather than, what do I need to do in order to make sure my team wins? What is my contribution to helping the team win? And then not being defensive if someone comes along and points something out that you can do better, right? And that becomes the piece about not being defensive, is being open to change, being open to feedback and input, so that you can tap into your emotional intelligence, your self-awareness in particular, and your self-management, your emotional, controlling your emotions, and asking the questions: am I bringing what this team needs in this moment? Right? Am I bringing something that the team doesn't need right now, which would be me sort of getting in the way, me looking out for myself and my game. And one of the things that I thought was, and this was, I think, the very first round of the playoffs for the Warriors, Steph Curry had been injured the end of the season, right? And when he came back in the first round, he came off the bench. I'm sure Steph Curry can't remember the last time he came off the bench, right? And he did it for a number of games. Now, everybody else made a big deal about it. I didn't see him making a big deal. It was like, well, whatever is best for the team for us to move on is what I'm willing to do. And it sent a message to the person who was starting in his place. If the superstar of the team is willing to sort of subjugate his ego for the betterment of the team, and you haven't reached his status yet, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to do the same thing? Or are you going to be someone who's going to whine and complain because you think you should be starting? Right. And again, just using that as an analogy, but this happens in teams all the time. It happens. And I'll give an example for myself. When I was in my last role, I led this huge effort. Hundreds and hundreds of hours went into this endeavor with all the levels of people that I was working with. Dozens and more of attorneys and lobbyists and public relations people, all working on this a bill that ultimately was passed. And when it came down to it, I was getting lots of people telling me what a great job I had done. You did a great job. And I did do a great job. But I was like, it wasn't just me.
You single-handedly passed that bill.
Like, right? And I was like, well, I didn't do it alone. I couldn't have done it alone. Right? But then there were other people who were above me that when someone's congratulated them for the effort that our organization accomplished, led by me, right? But involving these hundreds of other people, they were like, thank you. As if they had done it, right? And I get on a lot of levels, the way our society is set up is to give credit to the person at the top. But your job as the person at the top is not to accept the credit as if it was solely you. Yes, accept it on behalf of and acknowledge those who made it possible, but don't pretend like it was you.
Yeah, I think that it's, I'm going to go out on a limb here. And, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm going to play devil's.
You're entitled. You can disagree with me if you
want. No. I'm going to play devil's advocate. And I'm going to say that it is very hard for the way that we are designed, I'm going to backtrack from that. We're designed to function in groups. We are. I mean, that's how we succeeded as humanity, is, which is why, and this is a conversation for another time, which is why we agree with things that we don't necessarily agree with, because we don't want to be ostracized by the group. True. Right? Which meant,
I disagree.
Yeah. No. In the olden days, when you were ostracized from the group, that meant certain death because you couldn't feed yourself. You needed to be part of that group. But what's happened now, and a lot of it has to do with this, the American mindset and how, one person can do all these things, which is not true. One person can spearhead something. One person can have a great idea. One person can be a linchpin, but a person, there are very few things that you can do on your own.
Right.
Look at any of the great inventions, that we give credit to one person. It wasn't one person. It was usually a team of people. At least another person was there. There are very few inventions that were created by just one person. Certainly there are, but that's rare. But I think that living in, our country, the way the culture of our country is set up, and, especially with social media now, it's all about the individual. And people are really trying to position themselves to be, I'm unique, or I'm I'm unique, but I'm just like this person, which I find to be mind-numbing, because there's a certain level of like cloning that goes on, but then they try to set themselves apart, and so this is like this weird thing that's going on right now. And I think that particularly in this country, or at least, I'll leave it here, because I don't have enough, research to say about the Western hemisphere. But here, there's this, rugged individualism.
Right.
And it's like, I did this myself, and, I'm taking the credit for this. And, look at movie stars, right? You look at a movie star and you say, oh, that person's a fantastic actor. What about the cinematographer? What about the director? What about the supporting cast? What about the script? Would that person be so great? Maybe, but we don't look at everything that's involved. We just look at that one person. And so I think that the standpoint of a leader who's like that is like, I gotta get mine. I gotta show how I did this, because who knows when that spotlight is going to be on me again. I
Right.
think that's the danger of it. It's very alluring, but it makes you, I think in the long run, it makes you a very weak leader. It certainly will tarnish your legacy, especially now that we're looking at some of the leaders that we revered in the past, and we're looking at them again and going, they weren't so great.
Right. Right. No, I agree with you. It is something that you have to fight against, and it goes back to emotional intelligence and self-awareness and understanding who you are and how you come across the people and all of that. It takes some effort, right? And from where I'm coming from, and how I am working with my clients and helping them to develop, is understanding again, what is it that you want, right? What kind of leader do you want to be? And then you're taking actions that move you towards being that. I do not have one single client who says they want to be the kind of leader that runs roughshod all over people. I do not have one single client. Now, they may feel that way in reality, and they know it's not it's not politically correct, or it's something that they should say. But in all reality, and in seriousness, I don't believe that that's what they want. I do believe that they want to be there, developing their team members, helping them to be the best, so that they can achieve more together than any one of them can achieve individually. And ultimately, that's what team is, right? Together, everyone achieves more. You can't do it alone. You've never done it alone. And as much as whatever you've done by yourself, there was a lot of individual you in it, likelihood you didn't do it alone, right? There are other people, whatever part they're playing, big or small, there was a contribution. And that goes to the bill that I was working on. I facilitated the discussions. I facilitated the drafting of the language. I didn't write any of the language. Nothing I did without input and contribution from other people. And I was okay saying that. Other people involved in the process, not so much. And they didn't even do what I did, right? So they're taking credit for the work that I did. I am not taking credit for the work that other people did. And I'm looking at it, it's like, I don't get it. But if you point that out to someone, there's a defensive attitude about it that, I was involved in whatever capacity, therefore. And if that's how you want to go about it, first of all, you can lead any way you want. Ultimately, the question on whether or not you're leading well or leading effectively is whether or not your goal is more than getting credit and kudos for yourself, and whether or not other people as part of the group feel the same way that you do, right? Yeah. So if you feel, I'm lifted up, I'm empowered, I'm all of that, and no one else is on your team is feeling any of that, my invitation to you, my challenge to you is to take a deeper look and to ask some questions.
I totally agree. But I also think there's been a shift, and I'm going to use this country and not to get into too much of the politics, but there has been a shift as of late, and you'll see that there's factions of people that believe that it's all about me and look what I did and how great. They think that's great leadership, but it's not. It's not great leadership. And yelling at people and putting people down. And, I remember when, I always tried to be apolitical. There was another leader who was in power in this country, and I remember somebody was praising how decisive they were, but many of the decisions were terrible decisions. And just because you're decisive, that doesn't mean that you're doing a great job. You can, I'm all in this one thing and not listening to anybody else is not good. And effective leaders, they want to hear what other people say.
Yes.
They want to hear the person that disagrees with them because they're confident enough that they can take it. And if you find yourself, I think a good test for people, I should have said for the last, when you go, do I have any closing thoughts? But a good test is if you're in a meeting and you're the leader and you have an idea, ask for dissenting opinions. And if you can take it, then you're on your way. And that's key. If you can listen to somebody criticize or critique your idea and make it better without feeling that sting, or even if you feel that sting, even better if you feel it and you don't act on it, that's the sign that you're on your way, because it will only make you better. I've experienced this in my leadership, in my coaching. Man, that stuff is hard to take when you think that you're really good at something. But when you're really good at something, that's when you really need to learn more, because you can plateau. I've experienced it. I think I said music. I experienced it in sport, or for our European listeners, sport, right? Sports, I was going to say, sport. But it's one of those things you need to work on. I mean, I remember basketball. I used to play a lot of pickup basketball. I was nowhere near as good as your husband, but I was
me either. If it helps.
I was pretty good. And a friend of mine, he used to, he transferred to my college from Pepperdine. He used to play for Pepperdine. He said, you got to work on going left. And, he made me put my right hand behind my back and dribble with my left hand and go left for weeks. And it improved now I was pretty good going right. And, but that made me a better player. The thing that made it easy to take was I knew he was better than me. But sometimes people like, well, who are you? So we were peers, but he was better than me, right? So there was still that hierarchical kind of thing to it. But I think people have a problem hearing things from people that are beneath, quote unquote, beneath them. Yeah. And that's the real test as to whether or not you're confident.
Yeah, and being defensive. So I want to build on that, and then I want to share 3 tips that are from the article that are included in the post here. One is that confidence, and I think until we accept this notion, a lot of us will have trouble with confidence, and it is that confidence is situational. Right? Very few people, if any, are blanket confidence across everything that's happening in their lives. Right? And so you can be confident in your physical abilities and not in your mental or intellectual abilities. You could be confident in your intellectual, academic endeavors and not in your business endeavors, right? And then you can take those areas and break them down. You can, in your academics, you could be confident in English and not in math and science, right? And it happens all the time. People love writing or reading, but they can't stand math. They don't have any confidence in math. They can't do it, can't balance a checkbook with a calculator kind of people, right? So it's situational. And when you understand that, and that it's not like you're going to say, well, I'm a confident person. And then if you are not actually that, what happens is you start operating from an ego perspective where you're trying to protect yourself, right? You're taking on actions. Maybe you're behaving in ways that are overly aggressive or bravado in an attempt to prove that you've got it all together in that area, rather than just recognizing this is one of those areas I need some improvement in. Now, you don't have to go around announcing that to the world, but you do need to announce, you do need to accept it, acknowledge it, and accept it for yourself. And then take the actions necessary either to shore up or to bring people on board who fill those gaps for you, right? Which is the other thing. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room in order to be an effective or a great leader. Understanding where your weaknesses are and then filling those gaps with people who are better equipped to handle those things makes you an effective leader, right? Understanding and then tapping into other people's talents and abilities. So that recognize that it's situational and that's okay. You don't have to have it all together in every area in order for you to be a great leader. And then I just want to, again, the article that I shared is one that I published a year ago. It's called The Confidence Game. It's 3 quick tips for an immediate boost in your confidence. Will this solve all your confidence problems? No. But it is a step in the right direction. Ultimately, confidence is built by really one thing. It's taking action. You cannot think your way confident. Now, what you think, your mindset is a part of staying confident and can help get you moving in that direction. But you're not going to just sit in your chair at home and say, I am confident. I'm the best basketball player on the planet. Until you go out and play basketball and compete with other people, right?
Yeah, you gotta act.
It's just, that's in your head, and that may be your ego talking, trying to protect you, but ultimately, right, you have to take some action in order for that to build. So the way that I describe it in the article is, one, you've got to push through those, whatever fears you have, whatever doubts you have, right? And one way to do that is to tap into what you've done, where you've succeeded in the past, and use that as building blocks to help you to move through your fears and take action, even if you have doubts that you can do something, right? You tap into what's happened in order to remind yourself, one, that you can do things. You can do hard things. You can do really difficult things for the first time. Everything that you have mastered at one point in your life, you were a beginner, right? At one point you had never done it. Whatever it is, every single thing you have accomplished started with you never having done it before. And so you can remember the things that you've done, the successes that you've had, and use that to help you say, oh, I can do this. Let me take on this new thing that I'm a little weary about, right? Leery about. The other is just doing it anyway, right? And sometimes you have to talk yourself into it. Sometimes you just go. I have something that I use. I learned it from Tony Robbins, and it is, when I say go, we go. That's me talking to myself. When I say go, we go. And not to spend a whole lot of time ruminating and trying to talk myself out of, right? Because that's something that happens when there's a little fear or doubt. It gets in our head. Then the inner critic starts. The negative voices start in our head. And next thing you know, you're not doing something that you want to do, right? And then that compounds itself with other things that you've talked yourself out of. And then over time, you've got what's the word that I'm looking for? You've got a body of work, basically, that says that you can't do things. but you're not going to let other people know that. And so that's where the ego comes in. You start pretending. Robert mentioned this at the very beginning, right? You fake it till you make it. And so you're pretending, imposter syndrome, all of that stuff. And you're pretending. And what comes out of that sometimes, not all the time, is being not particularly paying attention to the needs of other people or the needs of the group, because there you are again, sort of self-protecting,
right?
Because you don't want other people to know that you can't, or that you don't have the confidence, or that you're fearful or doubtful or whatever. So now you're pretending that it is, and it comes across in a way that is not helpful to the team as a whole.
Yeah, I think those points are excellent. I was taking some notes as I do, like writing stuff down. Yeah, it always amazes me, the whole fake it till you make it thing. And you know me better than most people, and you know how I like to prepare. And that sometimes, you just need to go out and do stuff. I'm a big fan of preparing, but I'm also a fan of doing. And sometimes you need a nudge to do, but once you've prepared, you got to just do it at some point. And when I used to teach a lot of public speaking and meeting facilitation. And I remember I was coaching someone through their presentation, and I could see them working themselves up. They were going over stuff, and I said, "Stop what you're doing." And I made it a point of talking to that person. I let them have some alone time. Then I said, "I'm going to talk to you until it's time for us to go on. You know what you got to do." And then I said, it was time. I said, "Now get up there and start talking." And they were fine. But I could see them working themselves up into a frenzy. Like I could see this, when they came into the room, they were confident because they had practice, and I had practiced, watched them, and I gave them critique, and they went over their pointers and they got things better. And they walked into the room and they were swaggerific when they walked in. And then about 3 minutes or 5 minutes before, I could see them tightening up, I could see them, you got it. We went through this, just go out there. Will you make a mistake? Absolutely. That's fine. Everybody makes, I don't care how good you are. You're going to make a mistake. Roll with it. That's the sign of an expert. When you can make the mistake and bounce back.
Right.
But some people, they want to be perfect. And that's that's the flip side of it. You want to be perfect because that feeds the ego too. I was perfect. There's no such thing as perfection, or if it is, it's fleeting. It's not
right.
It's not going to be repeatable.
Right.
So you need to get out there and do it and learn to roll with it, be organic, which is something that I struggle with. You and I have had that, which is why I became a jazz musician, because I didn't understand it.
And you don't have to be perfect. And because you're not doing this, nobody knows, right?
Nobody knows, right?
Which is the other thing that's a part of that, is that we've created in our head what it needs to be. You just need to do.
Yeah.
You just need to do. Take the action. Before I hit on the last point and we start to wrap up, we've got a couple of comments. I just want to share them. And Anara, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. She thanks us for bringing this topic to her attention. And Innocent says, I think there's a thin line, and many people out there tend to be egotistical, especially when they have traces of confidence. And exactly, that's what we're saying. When it's missing, right? Or when we overdo it often with the ego. All right. We let the ego step in because we don't want people to know what we know, which is that we're fearful or doubtful.
I'm a fake.
Whatever it is, right? Or not perfect.
Right.
Which, going back to your point, is you're not going to be perfect. Here's the secret. Everybody already knows you're not perfect.
Exactly.
So get over it.
Yeah.
Just get over it. And then Anara had another comment. Would you recommend any online test to distinguish between egotistical or simple confidence? Do you know one, Robert? Off the top of my head, I don't have one.
Yes, I do. I'm certified. The Energy Leadership Index assessment from IPEC. It talks about that. It directly looks at the difference between having a weak ego. It's really an attitudinal assessment. And if she's interested, she can contact me, and I can actually administer that to her. I can
there you go, Anar.
And then
reach out to Robert. He'll
Yep.
help you with that.
Yep.
Awesome. And then just the last one. So I talked about, taking a walk down memory lane and looking at your successes, taking action, just doing it. This will help build your confidence. And the other thing that is really important, this is hugely important to me in general, but is having a vision of what it is you are doing with your leadership, where it is you're trying to go, and what it is you are doing. And then visualizing it, right? Previewing it. So instead of reviewing what you've done, this is previewing what you want it to be, where you are going, having a mental picture, visualizing what it is you want, and then feeling what it feels like to get what you want. So in terms of being a leader in your team, how do you want your team to feel, right? When you guys have accomplished an assignment, a goal, what do you want not just you, but everyone on that team to feel, right? If you want everyone on that team to feel a sense of accomplishment, then it can't be about you. It goes back. It cannot be about you. Because if it's about you, the rest of them are not going to feel that. So when you understand what it is that you want, you can visualize it and you can feel it, you can preview it, you can pre-play it, then you can work through it and then take the action. When you feel what it is you want to feel, when you've actually done it, then you'll know that you've accomplished what you set out to accomplish. So any final thoughts?
I burnt my final thought earlier. No, I'll just repeat it. For leaders out there, even if you're not leading formally, you have an idea, ask if anybody has anything that they can, critique it or make it better, and see how you react. Because we're talking about ego versus confidence. And if you feel yourself wanting to defend your idea, that's good, because at least at least you feel yourself doing it. But take that pause and say, okay, why am I doing this? Is it because I feel that I'm being attacked? Well, that's something to look into. But really consider what other people say, if it's legitimate, and you'll know if it is, because they'll offer it up. It's how they offer it up.
I'll start with my second thought, which is to follow up on that, and then end with my first one, is that concept about being defensive. If you are being defensive, you can make an assumption that that's born out of ego, right? If you feel a need to be defensive, if someone is offering up something to you, input, feedback, all it is words, right? And if you feel some kind of way about it, check your ego, right? Ask some questions, get curious about it. And then the bottom line here about ego versus confidence is remembering it's not about you, right? If you remember that this isn't about you, that it is about serving your team, the members of your team, lifting them up, empowering them, getting everyone on the same page, moving, everyone towards the same goal, there's no room. And everyone gets credit for their contribution to the whole, right? It takes all of you. It takes your entire team to do what your team is meant to do. Otherwise, you could go be a tennis player or a golfer. and do it all by yourself, right?
And you still need a team.
Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Depends on how good you want to be.
That's true.
But with that, I want to thank you. Well, we want to thank you, not just me, but both of on behalf of Robert and I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank you for your comments, participating. If there's anything that Robert and or I can do to be of assistance to you, to be of service to you, helping you, to be a part of your team, to help you get where you want to go in your leadership, in your business, in your work, whatever it is, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to help you with that. Or if you've got an organization, a team that you're running, or a business that you're running, and you need some assistance with organizational development issues, please feel free to reach out to us. We are here, State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond, on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. We look forward to seeing you next time and wish you a great rest of your day. Take care.
Bye now.